Words of the late evangelist Billy Graham, we are the Bibles the world is reading. We are the creed the world is needing. We are the sermon the world is heeding. May I speak to you in the name of the one holy and living God. Amen. Please be seated. One of my favorite parts of being a priest, as April and probably Drew know so well, is that people love to give me crosses. I think it's hard to be a priest without gathering up quite the collection. If anyone feels called to gift a car or a vacation home, I'm glad to accept it. But I do love my collection of crosses. Many of them come from exotic places. This is a pocket cross made out of olive wood from the Holy Land. I have others from Istanbul and India, crosses that people have brought home to me from Mexico. Still others bear an attachment to a particularly special person. When I married Jeff and Beth Wolfer this summer, Beth brought me this beautiful metal crucifix that was her mom, who was a priest. It belonged to her. I think of the cross that my grandmother gifted to me that belonged to her friend Jan, who was a Catholic priest who died of AIDS in the 90s. I'm also reminded of crosses that people have gifted me, particularly at transitions. The cross I received when I was confirmed, or the cross I received when I was a leader in youth group at the Happening retreat. It's really a remarkable symbol, and in times of joy, times of sadness, times of transition, alike for Christians, this profound symbol of the cross hovers over it all, somehow able to contain at once and hold in tension both great joy, great sorrow, and everything in between. The season of Lent calls us to consider once again the cross that Jesus bore for us, neither light nor beautiful, nor particularly pleasant to think about. No, the cross that Jesus bore was a tool for military state execution. It was truly more akin to a noose than a necklace, not meant to be worn as earrings, but something more like an electric chair. And so the cross of Christ participates in the great enterprise of Christianity that is reclaiming things meant for our harm, using them for our good. Because of the cross, the Christian faith inherently contains a political aspect. The cross was literally used by the Roman government for executions. The very word gospel, with which Mark opens his gospel, comes from the word evangelion, which meant good news. But originally, the word gospel was meant as a military decree. It was good news from the battlefield. Again and again, Christianity takes these words, these symbols that were meant for our harm, and reclaims them for the good. To put today's reading from Mark in context, just back up 2 verses from today's reading, and Jesus is asking the disciples, "Who do you say that I am?" And Peter, eager Peter, the teacher's pet, everyone's favorite, raises his hand, and he's the first to answer and says, "Jesus, you are the Messiah." He gets it right. But then Jesus says, "All right, guys," probably some gals there too, but he says, "All right, guys, don't tell anyone yet. The world isn't ready to hear this." And then when we pick up with today's reading, just 2 verses after Peter gets it right, Jesus begins to speak quite openly about suffering and death and being rejected by the chief scribes and the elders, being killed, and after 3 days rising again. But it's so shocking to the disciples' ears that they're not ready to hear the hope piece, the part about rising again yet. No, they are still in the shock and terror of the speech about death, suffering. Really hard things to hear. And so Peter acts kind of like Jesus' campaign manager. He pulls Jesus aside and says, "What are you doing? This platform is not going to sell. Nobody wants to hear about death and suffering. And anyways, you're supposed to be the Messiah. You're supposed to be the king. Messiahs are supposed to be victorious. Messiahs are supposed to be winners. What is all this about suffering?" Jesus rebukes Peter and says, "Get behind me, Satan." Well, a couple observations about this exchange. First is that Peter had the right answer about Jesus. But as teachers know especially well, there's a big difference between having the right answer and truly comprehending. You know, we live in Chattanooga. It's been named America's most Bible-minded city. How many billboards and bumper stickers do we pass by and see every day that say something to the effect of "Jesus is Lord"? And yet, do the people putting up those bumper stickers really understand and comprehend the full implications of that? And do we understand what that really means? Secondly, I'm not sure that I think Peter is upset about what Jesus had to say. But I think he's also perhaps equally upset about how Jesus said it. Look at the gospel again. It says that Jesus was speaking about these things quite openly. Quite openly. Speaking openly can get us in big trouble these days. Think about all the things that we're not supposed to talk about openly. There's the big three at Thanksgiving: religion, sex, and politics, right? We're not supposed to talk about those things at the dinner table. But then think about all those other things in our personal lives. Illness, mental illness, teenage pregnancy, bankruptcy, fears, failures. We're not supposed to talk about those things openly, are we? And yet, this is completely learned behavior, because our children are quite ready to speak very openly about just about anything. My mother will never let me forget when I was 4 years old and I wandered off in the department store for about 5 minutes, and when she found me, I had discovered, have you seen these like plastic electronic parakeets? I think they have them like at Cracker Barrel still in the toy section. And so these parakeets, you say something and they record you, and they repeat back what you said in a parakeet voice, right? And so when my mom finally found me, I had discovered this parakeet. And not only did she find me, but she found a whole crowd of onlookers gathered around me in glee and laughter as her 4-year-old was uttering 4-letter words and hearing them come right back. Quite the spectacle. Quite the spectacle. Open speaking. So during these Winter Olympics, anyone else fallen just a little bit in love with Adam Rippon? Any Adam Rippon fans? I've fallen a little bit in love. Michael and I have talked about it. I think we're okay. But this guy, not only is he a beautiful human being and an incredible figure skater, but if you listen to his interviews, he's just totally unleashed. Like, he does not give a flip about what anybody thinks about anything he says. He just speaks his mind and tells it like it is. And there's something, we all know those people in our lives who aren't afraid to just speak openly about whatever. And there's something so freeing and liberating about their spirits. Open speaking. The older we get, the harder this kind of open speaking is. And yet, I think all the more our souls yearn and desire to have spaces where we can engage in such honesty. I think Lent is always a good time to consider again what goes on down in the basement. And I don't just mean in the basement of our hearts, but literally in the basement of Grace Church. Day in and day out, week after week, almost every night, we have 12-step groups, AA, NA, different addiction groups meeting in our church basement. And while the churches have so much anxiety about attendance and membership these days, I can tell you that AA does not have an attendance problem. I mean, our Undercroft is flooded with people day in and day out. And the reason people go to these groups is because they work. And transformation happens. And it's because it all starts with open speaking, creating a safe space to say, this is who I am, this is what I struggle with, these are my fears, these are my failures. And they hold folks accountable in community to make amends, to seek forgiveness, to be transformed. Open speaking. That's why I'm so incredibly proud of these young people who have been rising up out of Parkland, Florida, to say no more to gun violence. No more to guns in our schools. There's a better way. There's a more creative way than just giving our teachers guns. Thank God for our young people. Thank God, there's a better way. They're engaging in open speaking with one another, with their civic leaders. And surely the students, I bet that the students aren't in 100% agreement with themselves. They certainly aren't in 100% agreement with their civic leaders. But they're not afraid to speak their truth, to speak of their experience, to work and strive and yearn together for a more excellent way. And it starts with open speaking. But you see, like Peter, we are so afraid. There is so much fear out there right now, within and without. So often we're afraid of the truth. Sometimes the truth hurts. Sometimes the truth is really dark. But you see, these kids in Parkland, they're helping us all as a society to name our addictions, to violence, to hate, to money. You see, I think where Brother Billy Graham, God rest his soul, he did a lot of things well. I think he overemphasized the personal relationship part, right? It's about me and Jesus on the cross. But see, the cross is both vertical and horizontal. It puts us in relationship not only with God, but with the whole world. And it demands that we seek a better way. That we let go of our collective addictions and fears. I think I had more to say, but I think I'm done, actually. Amen.
Words of the Nicene Creed.